All right, welcome in for our State House Insiders. Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist, Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist. Guys, let's talk about that crossover date. It is coming up. It is April 10th. What bills are out there, Dave, that may or may not make that crossover date?
So a month before the end of session, any bill that starts in one house has to make it over to the other house. So that cutoff date is going to be April the 10th. Well, the last legislative day before that is going to be Thursday, April the 7th. And so both houses are working right now to get through as many bills as they possibly can in their respective houses to get them to cross over to the other house so they can be debated and voted on before the end of the year. Now, that doesn't mean that something can't be moved across, but it takes a supermajority on both sides. So we have things like medical marijuana has already made its way across. The House is going to be debating that most likely next week. Save Women's Sports is a bill that is being pushed through on both sides. It was almost a question of which one was going to take the lead. It looks like the House is going to take the lead on that one next week, but there are a lot of other bills that are going to have to get moving. And so legislators are looking at the next 3 days of legislative session next week to see how much they can get across the line before they get to that crossover date.
Dave, I think it's important to note that just because a bill makes the crossover date does not mean it's going to be signed or even passed into law. Truth be told, bills that seem to be more controversial have less likely of a chance of passing, even though it may have made the crossover deadline. Dave, you mentioned a few, but you cannot forget about some of the alcohol-related bills like curbside, like booze pop, which came up last night, I understand, in debate in the South Carolina House, and a number of others. I think what I'm most frustrated and disappointed by is most of the legislation that will make the crossover day, I don't think truly fit into the needs and concerns of the people of South Carolina. And you can count that as Democrat, Republicans, Independents, or those who do not participate. We have real challenges in the state, and most of those challenges can be met by passing things from a legislative perspective.
And so one of those things, JR, that has passed over is paid family leave, which to Antoine's credit there was a big issue that Senator Darrell Jackson's been pushing through. That has made a crossover. And so it's really going to be a question then of, will it make it through and get the votes that it needs in the Senate so that state employees who have children are going to have paid leave for themselves when they have children coming up after this new budget year starts up in July.
Antoine, the deadline has come and gone now for people to file to run for office. As we see things tonight, we're still set for a June 14th primary, correct?
That's correct. At least when it comes to most offices in South Carolina. As you know, there are several lawsuits pending when it comes to some of the maps that have been drawn from a Republican-dominated General Assembly. And so we'll see how the courts ruled with the unfair maps that have come and been passed and signed into law by Governor McMaster. I suspect that the process will continue to roll on and we will conduct ourselves with business as usual. But I think today's deadline is a friendly reminder that if you do not like what you see and what you have in those who represent you at all levels of government, you had the opportunity to sign up yourself, or you have another opportunity to vote in the upcoming June primaries all across the state.
I think it's a big announcement for the sake of democracy when you start seeing the people who decided that they were going to run for office. I mean, there are a lot of folks who are getting challenged, and they're expecting to be anywhere from 25 to 35 of the 124 seats in the South Carolina House, JR, that are going to be up for grabs. But then you've got some races like the Attorney General of South Carolina, Alan Wilson, has a known Republican challenger, but no challenger on the Democratic side. And so that's most likely going to mean clear sailing for some folks. And the real fights we're going to see are probably going to be in the gubernatorial race and then that race for superintendent of education.
In a state like South Carolina, most of the hefty battles, Dave and Gerald, are fought out in the Democratic and Republican primaries. And in our state, you can only choose one that you can vote in. And so we'll see how June plays out, both at the statewide level and the local level, because as I oftentimes like to remind people, the closer your government is to you, the more important it is for you.
All right, quickly, I want to get reaction from both of you. Senator Lindsey Graham saying today he is not going to vote to confirm Ketanji Brown Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court. Antoine, your response?
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed because I think Senator Graham has probably taken on the political posture of some of his colleagues. He was very adamant about his position on Judge Childs, respectfully so, because she is from South Carolina. But regardless of the politics of your caucus, the historical moment we're in and having the first Black woman serve on the nation's highest court, not just a Black woman, but an overqualified, perhaps the most qualified woman to ever be nominated, is disappointing and frustrating. And when you consider his colleague, Republican Susan Collins, has said, yes, she will vote for the president's nominee, I think it's a little disappointing in Senator Graham. However, he has the right to make whatever decisions he wants.
I think Senator Graham made some views on the judgments that she has made over time. And those are things that are called into question on his part. Personally, I would have much rather seen Judge Childs, because I think having someone from the South on the court, not someone who's been from the Ivy League schools, would be a much better balance for what we need on the Supreme Court right now, because we don't have that perspective that comes from someone, especially an African-American woman from the South. I think that would be a great addition to the court in Washington, D.C.
And what I was most frustrated by is the fact that Senator Graham has voted for her in other examples of two or three other times when she's been confirmed by the United States Senate, but this time he could not find the posture to vote for her. I think that's probably more leans into why I'm frustrated by his position.
Dave, Antoine, guys, as always, thank you so very much. We're going to take a quick break. Julia, we'll have more news headlines when we come back.